Welcome to RotoWire TV. I'm Heather Ankeny. He's the expert, Chris Liss, answering our fantasy football and baseball questions. Got a fantasy football question for you. Draft. Y'all went up to San Francisco and did a fantasy experts draft. It was a little funky.
So to speak.
Yeah. Well, there were some experts there. Right.
No,
you were there.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Everyone's a so-called expert.
Right.
Did everybody?
Especially in football. I mean, anybody can call themselves an expert. But go ahead.
Okay. You drafted. You had some sort of funky league parameters. It made your draft, and maybe not your typical standard scoring draft, right? So how important is it to know your scoring parameters before you head into your own draft?
It's probably the most important thing you can know besides just knowing the player pool. I mean, obviously you have to know who's good and who's not, but to the extent that a player produces on the field, that's only valuable to your fantasy team insofar as it translates to the points system that you have, and those are your parameters, right? So quarterbacks in that FSTA league in San Francisco got a point for every 30 yards passing. So, just do the math. I mean, if a guy gets, 4,500 yards passing, that's the same thing as, 1,500 yards rushing, because there's a point every 10 rushing yards. And so quarterbacks usually, get so many yardage points, they got really devalued in that, except for the rushing quarterbacks like Robert Griffin III and, Cam Newton and, even guys like Andrew Luck and Aaron Rodgers were bumped. They were bumped. Tim Tebow, I don't think he got drafted. He might have. Okay. But anyway, as a result, no quarterback went in the first round, and that was as it should be in that particular draft. Now, if you're someone at home that thinks, oh, great, SiriusXM is carrying an expert draft, I'm going to learn where the experts are taking these guys, and you're like, wow, no one took a quarterback, I guess I won't in the first round, you're going to be misled if you're drafting in a normal scoring system where quarterbacks are far more valuable than they were in that draft. So you really got to know your scoring system. You got to know what the points on the field translate to in your league. And just a simple example, a more common one, it's fine to do whatever you want. You can have a scoring system where, a passing yard's worth a point, it's worth 10 points, it's worth a tenth of a point, whatever you want.
Do you have any leagues where the coach, the winner loss?
Oh, not that I'm in, but
it's
I've
kind
heard
of fun.
Where you start a coach and he gets a win.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to be able to, kind of handicap.
I want to implement that this year.
Put it in your league.
Whatever. Fun.
Well, exactly. In your league, do whatever you want. Do what's fun, right? But in an expert league, I think you kind of have an obligation to do something that people can relate to, so they can look at the draft board and say, oh, this guy was a third-round pick. Maybe I'll take him the third round in my league. Our board really wasn't that useful to people in that way. So, kind of a fail on the scoring system. But whatever, it's interesting. It's a way to let people, at least think this, at least to make this point that, if the scoring system's different, don't apply that draft board to anything that you're doing in a standard scoring system.
And the same goes even for a standard scoring cheat sheet that you could print up on various websites, right? That might not be the best thing to walk into your draft with if you haven't looked at what your scoring system is.
Right. So you have a really common one is PPR, point per reception.
Right.
And gives all the guys a point every pass they catch. And guys like Wes Welker, who catch 100 balls a year plus, but don't get a ton of touchdowns, and last year had a ton of yards, but I don't think he's going to get nearly as many, are way more valuable in a PPR than they are in a standard system, right? So if you go into your PPR draft with your straight cheat sheet, it's probably going to mislead you. So yeah, you got to know the parameters. You got to factor them into your rankings. RotoWire.com, we have a customizable area where,
of course we do,
even in all but the weirdest of scoring systems, we can accommodate.
Check your scoring system before you draft.
Yeah.
You heard it from Chris Liss. This is RotoWire TV.